Women have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talents, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution.
Welcome in. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Senabella. It is a pleasure to be here yet another day, another great Friday. I'm here in Chicago, and you know what? I am hanging in there. Everything is going well, despite the fact that these forces out here will try to change things. You know what? You have to stay resilient. So how you doing? Welcome. This is Coffee Break with Senabella, and of course, I'm Senabella. If it's your first time here, then I want to encourage you to stay. Today, we have a very interesting way we're going forward with the show today, and we're talking about family. What do we do, and how have we met the challenge to raise our children? What have we left them with so that they can be prepared for what's coming next? Now, many of us think of ourselves as good parents, and many of us think of ourselves as like, as we age and our children grow up, like we ask ourselves, what did we miss? Like, what did I do wrong? And we begin to realize there are a lot of steps that we have not taken that we should have taken, or that we've taken for granted. And in taking those steps for granted, it's kind of left a big, big, deep hole in the relationship you have with your child or children. So now it's up to you to figure out what you need to do. Well, today we're going to have Naimah Latif join us. She is the founder of the network. And so as a result of that, I think that we're going to not only get great conversation from, say, myself and you, the audience, when you chime in and you make comments or questions, which you're open to share here live with us, then you're going to get also a professional point of view. She's an author, and she's written a great book on all of the subject matter that we're going to talk today. So, having said that, I feel like I'm a little lost. I'm used to putting somebody right in the room. Is Naimah in the room? Is she ready to come in? Let me see. Oh, she is. She's right here. Let me add her to stage. Hi, Naimah.
Well, Grand Rising, how are you?
I'm fine. Really, what's happening inside of me is that there is a birth record that I was supposed to show on this here episode of Coffee Break with Senabella. And I inadvertently took it down and I couldn't find it again. And it gives all of the birth stats from my father's side of the family from the 1800s.
Well, you know what? That might have been divine intervention, because I don't know if you want to show that, because then you're giving people who can do unkind things and duplicate your records in order to, you know how people steal identities. So that was the creator protecting you.
Yeah, some of the records so old they would literally have to recreate a whole new thing. But I get you. And you know, it's funny, I thought about that for a minute too, with things being so sensitive. Yeah, you have to be careful, right?
Absolutely. You know, people who have wrong intentions, they find the most creative ways to enact them. So we don't want to give any help.
You know how when we grew up, we say that person's a liar. And everybody knew that person was a liar. And so everybody said, don't say nothing to him or her. And most of the time it was a him we were talking about, right?
Yes.
Your family, you had a her that was a liar. You really shook your head.
Everybody has somebody in the family that has issues, and everybody has experienced situations in their family where there's strife, there's conflict. Everybody has that family member that keeps gossip going and everything, and will always tell the worst about somebody. And you know, everybody's got that family secret that, you know, something happened, this person got pregnant by that person and nobody talks about it. I mean, everybody has those things. Every family has those things. But what it teaches us, it basically teaches us how to manage that when we encounter that out in the world. You're going to have all kinds of people, all kinds of relationships. You have to make choices that maintain your integrity. And that's the challenge that we have, especially as you mentioned, how we go about imparting the right things to our children in the midst of all the things that they're seeing growing up.
You know, and it's really interesting that we even broached this here part of it. It's not something I hadn't thought about. Characters, right? The characters in our family, how they affect us, how we view ourselves in the midst of these characters, right? And whether it's one or two or one other one, you know, I hear my mother, she was an only child. And so she ends up having 16 kids, 14 living children. And I just wondered how she gauged all of that. You know, how did my mom, you know, end up being this great mother, right? And so you see here, this is my mother, Valerita, and she met my father when she was 14, and they were married, and she came from Arkansas vis-a-vis Money, Mississippi, vis-a-vis, you know, and he had already left and come here, right? And so she meets him, and he says that my mother told him she was 17, and because she was voluptuous, he believed her. Right. So my dad is struck by my mom. Let me see if I can find a picture here. I had some things happen, so the pictures that I had didn't necessarily. But where's my dad? This is my dad right here in the pink shirt with this handkerchief around his neck. Oh, wow. And he's amidst his dad and mom, my grandmother and grandfather, the Gills. This is the Gill clan, and my aunties, all in the South. Yeah. So he leaves at 14 and comes to the city. My mother's on her way to the city with her mom, right? But he's how old was he when he met my mom? He said he was 17, or he was a little older than that, because he was 12 years older than my mother. So my mother was 14, he's 12 years older than her. And the reason he meets her is because my grandmother, Senabella, was a writer, and she was trying to sell her music. So she was working in the clubs and meeting all of the artists who were needing music, right? So I'm named after her, but she's my mother's mother. So she's there, and my mother's in her, you know, taking her with her, putting her behind the bar and whatever. And my father, he meets my mother in an establishment like that. And she is voluptuous. She is a beautiful young girl. And at that time, it was commonplace for guys to marry young girls, right? Even though we look at those things as an atrocity today, right?
Well, you know, the history behind that, a woman was supposed to be taken care of by a man. And many men really didn't get themselves established till they were maybe middle-aged or a little older, you know, late 20s, early 30s, maybe 40s. But a woman, you know, once she has reached official adulthood of 18, she's supposed to start having babies. That was the culture, that was the belief. So the woman might be considered a grown woman, but in order for the man to be able to perform his role, he needed to have been established, which usually takes a few more years. So you see a lot of those relationships where older men were marrying younger women.
Yeah.
And then that also, there's a certain dynamic with that kind of relationship too, because you have an older man who's dominating a younger woman, and she, being younger, is not going to be as assertive because she doesn't have the same confidence as she would have if she were an older woman. So those relationships we see, you know, in the generation of our parents and earlier, they tend to look like that, where there is that age gap sometimes. And that's because also women were not expected to have a full-time career outside of the home. So if your job was basically to have children, you didn't need an education for that. And we really have gone through an evolution when it comes to preparing our children, our girl children, to be career women. And that was something that happened just kind of recently after World War II. when women had to go into the factories and other kinds of jobs and clerical work outside the home to support the war effort. And then they just kind of never went back home after that, because like, oh, I used to have my own money. I like this.
Right.
You know, but then there's a whole dynamic that happens after that with, okay, so who's raising the children? And that's the challenge that our generation had.
Yeah. Hi, Rodney. Thank you for coming in the coffee break this morning. It's good to see that you're up and at it and you're with us. It is a very interesting history, Rodney. You know, when I did the when I did the what is it, deeply rooted Black, stories, and I was telling my story, I talked about so many different aspects or versions of what our history was, that it took a minute for me to decide what I would actually say in a storytelling, space, like what story would impact the audiences and help them to kind of understand and realize the makeup of my diverse family, right? Because here you see, again, this is my grandfather here to the far, left of me, right to them, everyone. And then my grandmother in the middle and some of their children. These are still just a few of the children. And that's why the birth record was so important, because it showed so many of the children and their parents. And so, you look at this here and you speak to what you say, what you're saying about the dynamic of what a woman's role was. But when we stop and take a look at it, it is invariably as important as whether she works outside the home or not. And as a mother, one of the things that we tend to grapple with is, did we provide enough love and nurturing to our children? When we work, we always conflicted with that. And it's what we end up fighting and arguing about at home. Yep. And so this is my same grandmother, Bessie, my father's mother, who had those children. She was just a beautiful, strong woman, beautiful, strong woman, and had beautiful children. And she was proud. You could see her here. Isn't that something? Yeah. Just beautiful. Very strong family, and comes from that strength, right? The grandfather, And so when we think about our family, we have a lot to talk about. But let's get into the makeup of who we are and our mentality, and how we get to decide, or how we've decided on what is important that we leave as a marker for our children to go forward. Because the conflict today, I believe, is that we're so busy trying to gain that we've forgotten that the gain has to come with an impact of high value morality and a methodology that is sort of sewn together as you go in some ways, and planned as well. So if we're not talking about all these pictures, if these people are not in your life, how do you put that into our children's life system, make them care about it? Today, we find that there are many generations of children and families that are lost to the history of their own families. And so storytelling has become quite big, and people want to know. So I want to kind of leave right here and allow you to speak, Naimah, because your book is very interesting. And I think it's interesting in that when I decided that I wanted to do this show, I started having arguments with my children. What's going on? I'm going on to talk about healthy relationships, and now I'm caught up in this here spider web of communication. And it really struck me hard. It's like, I'm supposed to be doing a show on this tomorrow. Why am I involved in this here back and forth? What's going on? What's going on? So I guess that's a good segue for you, Naimah.
Well, we all have had some disruptions in our families during that, I guess you could call it, the great migration from the South to the North. A lot of African American families where we got disconnected from grandparents and great grandparents, and the urban culture doesn't always allow for our elders to live in the house with us the way we may used to have lived, where you had grandmother living at home in the house and kind of helping raise the children, which provided that stability, because the economic reality is, for most of us, we never were the stay-at-home moms. We always had to do some kind of work to help supplement the income. But when we had those extended families and you had grandma that was watching the children, that was a difference. There was a connection to that past. Well, a lot of that changed. A lot of it came from the years some families moved north. Some of it came because we had the urbanization, we had the projects, we have all kinds of lifestyles with our families, some of them that were not conducive to extended family living. We know the whole story behind the welfare situation, where other groups were getting the government assistance, which came about after the war. But
allow me, I want to kind of ask a question. So, do you think all of that unsettledness and trying to find or discover what would move us forward is part of the problems that we have as a community in our families? And is it economic, or is it just the, as they call it, PTSD, the syndromes of PTSD? Is this one of the syndromes of it? All of that sort of being a gypsy, never knowing where you're going to land, what you're going to do, all of the things that were going on.
Well, the root of it is economics, because those are the reasons why we had to make the decisions that we had to make. And unfortunately, we ended up making decisions that made us dependent on a government system, which was even more destructive, because when we had, whether it's a family farm in the South or a little shop in the South, whenever we had systems where we created some kind of independence, then we had more power over our families. Mm. Once we got to the point where we were dependent on a government system, it was very destructive. Mm. And that's when we started making choices that our children began to feel the consequence of, whether it was choices to not stay together as a unit, the husband and wife, whether it was choices for the children to be raised with separate parents sometimes, and parents would split, and some children would go with one parent and some go with the other, and then the remarriage, and then sometimes you don't get contact with the previous parent and their relatives, and so a lot of disconnectedness. But a lot of it was precipitated by economic distress. And generally, whenever a family splits, it creates economic distress. And we haven't been able to figure out how to pull that back together, because the fallout of that comes from when you have children that are raised in a family where you don't have the extended family, you don't have the grandparents, you don't even have the parents together. And so children don't learn the process of building a relationship that is the economic foundation for the family. We're seeing the effects of that now. So many men and women have not seen that cooperative effort. They haven't seen the couple that gets together, buys a home, invest in property, and invest in things that they can pass down to the children to build that generational wealth. They haven't seen that. They've seen fighting, arguing, splitting. They haven't seen how you have that conversation with your children about even marriage and family. So even sex is out of context, and children are born out of context. And then there's the struggle. And often the single parent trying to figure out how to work a job and make sure their children are supervised. Well, you can't be in two places at one time.
Well, there's certainly a lot of guilt in parenting.
A lot of guilt in parenting, because people will watch you but not offer to step in when you don't necessarily have siblings who will say, well, let's work it out so that, I can keep the children while you work, or, you can drop them off here if you've got to make an errand. A lot of times when families don't maintain that cohesion, then siblings don't form that kind of bond that enables them to work together so that the children are all taken care of, because different challenges arise and you need to be able to rely on somebody. When that doesn't happen, the children are the ones who they suffer the consequences. So being able to prepare our children to work as a team, that's what a family does. And when that's not there, then they don't understand that that is the economic base that you need. When everybody's a separate entity trying to manage things themselves, they end up struggling. Whereas when you cooperate and you combine your efforts and your income, then everybody can thrive.
Well, you know, what's interesting about that is that, so my mother is left with all these children. My father and she break up, they split up. My mother goes to school to Columbia College. She is working through Catholicism and thinking through Islam, right? She's active in the community with Dick Gregory, and she's juggling all these balls in the air. And at home, we were an organized system. Like, we knew what time we were going to get up. We knew what time we were going to go to school and what school we were going to. We knew what time we had to be home. We could hear her voice even when she was whispering. We were afraid of our mother. She had the power to decide when she was going to slap the crap out of us, and she did. And it wasn't always when we thought it was going to happen. And my father would come by and see us, and he, in his shame, would sit outside because he came from a structured family. And he knew that his home was mismanaged, right? But what it also did is it stimulated in the male portion of our family. Our brothers were like, how were we going to support what's happening here in the house, right? And so I'll say this, one of the things that I've come by, and recently over the, say, last 3-4 years, a lot of families that are economically challenged are close. They're close in the sense that you can't say nothing to one without the other part of the family being a part of it. You can't get in the middle of their stuff. They know their grandparents, and they see their parents and their mothers, and they may be broken up with the guys and stuff that they're with, but they all come around. Yeah. It's sort of this charter, if you will, of stimulating the children to know that's my daddy, that's my mama, these are my grandparents, right? And so that's some way of saying this is the roll call for who we are, right? And you grow up and you always say, I wish I came from a family like that cooked and hung out at the parks all the time and did the stuff together. Because some families really had an understanding that we have to know who we are and what we're doing, right? And there was a greater majority, for some reason, that were lost to that whole idea.
Yes. And I've seen that. I've seen that, unfortunately. Of course, I've seen the families that very cohesive, a lot of social activities, family gatherings all the time. And so you can see that they've built those lifetime bonds. And then I've seen families where the siblings barely talk to each other. The parents split, maybe there's step parents, and that relationship is not good. So it's difficult when you don't have the cohesion of your family and your extended family, because all of that, it affects your economics. It affects the choices that you have to make, and it affects the information that you give your children. We have had difficulty demonstrating to our children how to work together with another person in order to achieve a goal. And that's the main reason why we're struggling so much financially. That's a very basic part of survival. And when you see families that are able to do that and they're able to thrive, I've known families that they might buy property together and, go into real estate together, or have a business together, and all the children work in the business. So you always had a job because your uncle had a restaurant, or whatever the case may be, or a corner store, or whatever it was,
and they shared.
And this is how a family thrives. But when you can't get along enough to work together,
That's it.
then you can't teach that principle. And so how can a child then understand the partnership relationship where you're working together to achieve a goal?
Naimah, you're at an important part of this conversation, because it is that part that really becomes fragile.
Yes.
Becomes so fragile. And that's why we pay attention to other families when they're out. They may curse each other out, drink, get drunk, and they all buy clothes and wear the same clothes on holidays and stay together, nothing to do nothing to them. And then you have other families who appear to be doing better, but aren't coming together better with their families. You don't hear them talk about the generations of their family. They're striving to be better educated, which I think education and the desire for both families to be seen as good Americans had a big part in playing with the destruction, or I say the obstruction.
Yes.
Of the Black family, right?
Yes.
We were so busy trying to live up to this code of ethics that was made for us to live up to, while it was okay for everyone else to kind of like just go about their way, because they were not dealing with the same situation. So we saw a lot via television or heard about it, or when we go out with them being together as families. We didn't know they were struggling the same way we were in many ways. And so that made us become more desirous of being economically sound from a family place. Like, I want to do this for my mother. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to go to school. I want to go to Harvard or Stanford or, right. And so all that's happening, but the principal value of why you're doing it is lost.
Yes.
And so we're creating a monetary society, but not a society of moral, construction, something that is constructive and worthwhile, that gets us to a place. And now we're all effed up in our heads too.
Yeah.
And now we're also a part of the system of crime.
Yes. Well, when you give a child a reason for living and doing what they're doing, it's got to be more than, I want to get a job so I can buy some things. There's a reason that you exist. And if it's not connected to a greater purpose, like you said, you're there to take care of your family, to move them to the next level of achievement, to provide for those coming after you, to live comfortably, and to give something of value to the society. That's the whole circle of life. I'm here to develop myself to my greatest potential so that I can be supportive to my family and my community and the world, and leave a legacy behind. And in the process, I'm cooperating with those beings that are connected to me. If we can't teach that, then our children won't understand why they're doing anything. And as a result, like you say, they have no values, no morals, no ethics. If the only thing that we're instilling them, you got to hustle and get some money, you got to get some money, you got to get some money. And then what? What's it all for? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to become?
I can say to my mother, that passion right there to try to assure that my children would have the things that they needed, it put me in a work mode mentality that I today have to hit myself on the head and say, you haven't stopped taking time to do other things that are going to make them know or help them to know that you care about them.
Yes.
If there's anything that I have to still incorporate in the building blocks of my children and my grandchildren, right? Or my sisters and brothers, is to stop grinding, right? And to start becoming more immersed in the personal side of life.
Yes. Yes.
And even when you do that, I think, and I'm saying I think because I'm not great at that. I'm not great at that, but I'm the person that will cook the food, buy the food, put everything together when people get in the room. And I'm busy working even when they're in the room. I still don't know how to sit down and to discuss
and enjoy the meal.
Free to discuss, right?
Yes.
And discussions when we're in the room that make these situations, right? Make these situations worthwhile. This one here, when we don't, I'm trying to figure out. So it says remove, and I'm going through the throws, but I want to show that, it's what made this worthwhile. This is what I remember. I remember this day. I remember my mother getting us together to go take this family photo. And I remember going down south and seeing it in my grandparents' house.
Mm-hmm.
It had such stature. It was what she really meant. But my mother was grinding all the time. She was in the community. She did everything. So I took a nod from her, but I missed a big part of, say, providing that comfort. As my son say, nurturing, mom, nurturing, right? And so my offspring are like me, always grinding.
Mm.
Okay, so yeah. What did we go over time? It says end stream.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's time to take a break.
Well, let's do it. We're going to come right back after this break. And yeah, let's go.
All right.
Okay, obviously I'm not where I need to be. So y'all forgive me if I
Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naimah. We're three Black moms.
And in case you didn't notice the resemblance, we're also three sisters.
We're going to be coming to you every week, sharing our successes and our mistakes as we navigate our lives as moms, wives, sisters, daughters, and of course, Black women in today's world.
We'll talk about it all: race, politics, religion, economics, culture, and we'll take a look at everything from whether or not to use corporal punishment to how do you teach your children about sex.
Look for our upcoming book, Growing Up Charles. It's a personal story about our lives growing up in Maple Park on Chicago's South Side. I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naimah. We're three Black moms. Follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Three Black Moms.
I'm not gonna lie, that's one of my favorite commercials. It is because it's the three sisters, we all are governed by this idea of the depiction of who we are as family, how we relate to one another. And here you are with your sisters discussing things that are extremely important. So let me just take it back to you, Naimah. You wrote this book. What drove you to let's talk about the name of the book and the kind of direction you took. What research did you manage to come up with before you wrote it?
Well, the book that was written back in 1994 with me and my husband was Slavery, the African-American Psychic Trauma. And this book addresses many of the errors that we're making because we're still holding on to a fear-based belief that came out of our enslavement experience. And the fact that we are now free people should have changed the way we're raising our children, but many of us are still raising children with the idea that the goal is to make sure we don't upset white people, or that we're approved of by white people, or that we're imitating white people, or we might get punished by white people. That fear that other people are in control of our destiny, we need to let that go. That's no longer a reality. And yet, even the way we gear our children to going to school, and we've talked about this on a lot of shows, if other ethnicities come here and see the tremendous opportunities for economic empowerment by setting up shop and selling something. That is how you grow your economy and your family. We have been geared on, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting a good job with benefits, but that became the goal for our education, as opposed to us gaining knowledge so that we could open up shop, study medicine so you can become a doctor and open up your doctor practice, study law.
But wait a minute. Do you think that had anything to do with the trauma of having them burn down our towns, take everything away from us? And so do you think that we sort of settled into this place where we were like, well, at least here, if it gets burned down, or at least here I'm safe working and I can grow and become something. And so ownership, having your own businesses and stuff became sort of like not so comfortable to think about.
That's what a trauma is, when you keep reliving the past as if it's the present and therefore not able to move forward to the future. Yes, some ugly things happen and we're done. And we went through a whole, as a nation, we're still unhealed from the trauma of that, which is why this conflict keeps resurfacing and things keep triggering our fear and rage. But we have got to change our focus from what was to what we intend to create. And that is a self-sustaining, independent, interdependent community. We can't do it as long as we're continuously recycling and restating and reliving, whether it's Rosewood or any other thriving community that was burned or any other tragedy that happened, because we're instilling our fear in children who didn't live through that. So instead of them experiencing the success of their college education, their work experience, and them having the confidence to move forward and create some independent enterprises, we're holding them down, stuck on our fears of what was done to us and our ancestors in the past.
Wow.
And now,
I'm sorry.
The world has changed, and we're not changing our thinking. So we're not empowering them the way we could.
And while we're watching other ethnicities come into America and as family, and they create money and wealth and go back and take that wealth home, right? Or they come here and they stay and have this here wealth. And we become further disenfranchised because we end up working for those same people who were not born here naturally. And so right now, even with the unsettling of everything that's going on economically, people are starting to talk about things like, I was always buying a bag that was not worth what it was, because the Chinese are now saying we're mad at you, America, for saying this to us. And they're sharing how much the cost of things really were. Well, we already kind of knew what the cost of things were, but we were blindly still allowing ourselves to spend our money. There was this one woman, and I don't have the clip, but she had a whole room full of every high-end bag. And she said, you mean to tell me all these bags right here that I put all my work for these bags to have are not worth what I paid for? And she still didn't realize when she was saying it, when she said, China, I'm coming there to buy. I'm like, she's stuck. So now you're going to take a plane to go over and go get it. So it's like, it's not that we shouldn't want to have high quality, good things. It's how we have been traumatized to believe that this is the only way to go about it.
And who decides whether something is valuable?
Right.
And when we create things that we value ourselves and pay the price for what we create, then it has the value that we've given it. It's like, well, this week I had a wonderful dress designer on, beautiful African boutique, fabulous clothing and all kinds of accessories and everything coming out of Africa. So if we are empowering our own merchants, then the economic abundance and prosperity will circulate through our community. That's how that's how Black Wall Street was built. People were jealous because we were able to thrive and we were self-sufficient. And in their jealousy, yes, they committed acts of violence that destroyed it and burned it down. But do we get stuck there in that trauma, or do we recognize that we had those skills and rebuild and build even better? Do we do that? That's the power that we have if we would just accept it. But one of the things that has to happen is that we have to give our children the expectation that they can do it and the vision to do it. One of the things that struck me,
being educated, because there are a lot of educated people without real work, without real money, without a home.
That's true. So you got the knowledge and we're looking for somebody to give you a job instead of, okay, now that I have this knowledge, let me market my skills so that I can get paid, instead of, well, let me wait until somebody thinks I'm worthy. Because that's the thinking. Well, make yourself worthy so that white people will hire you. When in fact, we're living in the economy now where all you got to do is market your skills and you can create your own income.
Right. Or
are knowing that. That's
right.
why they're
the best of me. Right. Or I want them to think the best of me. And we don't even know we're doing it until we get around them.
Right.
Then all of a sudden our language, our posture changes, and this desire to say, oh, yes, thank you so much. And, we're playing to the narrative. And we don't even realize, and we walk away feeling lost in some spirit, because now we sort of like turned around and let them just do whatever they wanted to us, and they don't even know, most of the time, they don't even know when we're doing that.
Right. So this is the example.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is the example we've been setting to our children, very disempowered kinds of attitude, when in fact, they have grown up in a world where there is a global economy. You can go online and sell anything. When I saw my daughter set up a business on Instagram, selling housewares, I'm like, oh, okay. They think differently, because in between jobs, she was a businesswoman, and she never stopped. And when we see that kind of energy in our children, we need to encourage it. That's because the world has changed and there are no barriers. We have to stop giving them our fears and our limited beliefs so that they can thrive. We need to push them to get knowledge and education, not so that white people can approve of them and they can hire them for a job, but so they can empower themselves, because they have the skills and they have all the tools they need. It's a different way of thinking. So we got to get over that trauma of believing that there is someone that has power over us, or someone that's greater than us, or someone that we have to bow to or bend to. That's in our minds. It's not the reality until we make it reality. And that's all a part of what has to be repaired.
I'm trying to give you like glory at the same time. My head is like spinning with thank you, because I truly believe that during the Black Lives Matter, this whole pandemic era, when our children were taken to the streets, destroying everything, saying no more of this crap. And I remember going downstairs and they tore 63rd Street stores up and stole all the stuff. And sometimes they had one gym shoe and didn't have the other. And I said, well, why are you doing this? They said, because you know what? All my life, they've done nothing for me. And so right now, I'm going to do something for me. And I'm like, but how does that benefit you? And they said, I don't know, ma'am. And they ran around with all these clothes and stuff in their hands and arms. And I was like shaking my head, trying to understand it. But as we speak about it, I understand how that movement changed the trajectory of how they felt. And they were no longer going to bow to a system of things that didn't make sense to them. And that's without them knowing their history. That's without them having better relationships with other people. Mm-hmm. They just decided on their own, boo-boo, the fool is over here. And all of a sudden you saw an economic surge in, I want to say Gen X and millennials. Mm-hmm. Taking charge going forward. Now, here's another part. We're talking about the history, though, because still some of them don't know how to thrive within the history of who we've been as real family, not the pain history, but the history that really is what we can stand up in, not to say my father was a king and a queen history. I'm talking about being that.
Yes.
Each family and royal. Like when I put up my family's pictures, then you're looking at what royalty is. It's lineage.
Yes. And that's one of the things that we emphasize in the book Slavery, the African American Psychic Trauma, is the fact that our history is beyond the slave history. And what we emphasize is that because we have inherited skills, genetic skills, whether it's science, linguistics, astronomy, we point out how someone as famous as George Washington Carver, the great scientist who really saved the Southern economy by understanding crop rotation and knowing how to get all kinds of products from various crops, not just the peanut, even though people remember him most for that, but he was a genius. And we point out how he comes from genius way back. So instead of us teaching a slave history to our children and disempowering them by making them feel like they're still subjugated, we must empower them by reminding them of people who built the great empires of Mali and Songhai, and the architecture and the physics laws that they must have mastered in order to do these things, the agricultural science that they used to magnify the produce that they were creating, and how they knew how to nurture the earth, and those skills that they brought here. The reason why we were farmers and we were producing the crops, and we had the skills, we had the agricultural skills, we brought that. And so we see those things manifested in our generations today, the same kinds of brilliance. We talk about even how we recollected history using the power of our minds to create the history of our lineage. We see that same mental skill in our present day hip hop artists. How are you going to tell a story that takes 5 minutes to tell, and it rhymes and it's to the beat, and you memorize and you can speak it? That is a mental genius. And when we see that, we have to recognize it for what it is. So yes, our children should profit from that. They should expand that. That is something inherited from their ancestors, because we train the minds of our children to memorize history so that it can never be lost, because it's in your mind. And there are families that take the responsibility of keeping the history of the entire community. We met, as a matter of fact, in our book, we mentioned how we actually got inspired for this book. We met a present day griot named is Fode Musa Suso. He's a musician.
Say his name again.
Fode Musa Suso. He's actually a nephew. Fode Musa Suso. And he's the nephew of the griot who recited the history for Alex Haley that helped him discover Kunta Kinte roots and when he was taken, because that was all part of the history. And so the man who was reciting that for him, if you saw the movie Roots, you saw how he was listening to the man recite, and Alex Haley, and then that's when he started retelling the story. And then Kunta Kinte, who was taken away and never seen again, and he realized that was his great ancestor. That was the connection.
That's something.
That whole story changed our entire existence here as African people born in America, because we did not really understand what happened until that movie Roots, that TV series was so groundbreaking. It was part of what America has to heal from, the hurt, the lies, the shame that we've been made to feel, so that we can understand what happened. And the whole slave experience, that was economic agenda of this country. How do we get free labor? How do we get free labor so we can work this land and we can rise to ascendancy? It was an economic system, and all the lies about us and our supposed inferiority and stupidity and all that was part of the lie to keep the system going, so that people wouldn't feel bad about treating other human beings that cruel. We know that it's a reality, but we're still holding on to a lot of those mistaken and wrong and erroneous beliefs, and in a way teaching it to our children. So then instead of them becoming the geniuses that they are with all the skills that they've inherited, we've dumbed them down. We put them in a school system, dumbs them down, and makes them believe the only thing they're good for is gearing themselves up to be a mindless worker in a system, or they have to cater to somebody else's decision that they look right and speak right in order for them to get paid. All of these crushing kinds of beliefs that we're allowing to keep being propagated, instead of us empowering our children with the knowledge of their history, that they come from people who are brilliant and it is genetic in them, and they have the power to create anything they need for their survival, and they don't need anybody's approval. That's when we can overcome the trauma of the past, when we stop reliving it as if it's the present, because we're much, 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 much more than former slaves. We shouldn't even speak that again, because whenever we speak it, we recreate it.
Well, I just want to say this. About 2 weeks ago, I said to myself, you know, my mother never had a vacation. So when my mother took a vacation, we thought somehow she abandoned us. Oh, she's gone for a whole week. Where'd she go? To DC? What for? What's she doing in Washington, DC? She had a vacation. We were like, we knew what to do. We were fine when she got back. But a couple weeks ago, it dawned on me, we all need a vacation. I don't mean let's go to another country or buy clothes, get on a plane travel. But I think that it would really benefit us for us to have 1 week of doing nothing. Don't have to go shopping for food. Don't shop for no clothes. Don't have to go out the house and do nothing. Don't have to do nothing. Just do nothing for a whole week. What would you do if you did not have a schedule to do anything for a whole week, and you couldn't go to work, and you couldn't, you couldn't shop? What would you do? Who would you do? How would that affect you, and what would you do after that?
Well, that is what freedom is. When you have the power to either work or stop working and give yourself a break. And this is why it's important for us to change the way we think about work. Work is something that you do because you enjoy doing it, and you want to give your creative energy to the society. But it needs to be within your power to stop working and relax, because your body and your mind need rejuvenation. Now, we know during that slave system, we were not allowed to stop working from sun up to sundown, and you were beaten if you stopped working. That's a trauma we're still carrying, and a belief that we're still carrying, so that we're allowing ourselves to be driven by these bosses on these jobs, and we really be tired if you miss a day. That same mentality, and sometimes people can't take it, and they actually have a nervous breakdown or physical breakdown, because it's not normal to be able to just keep working and working and working and never give yourself a break. You need a mental health break. You need a physical health break. And when you take the power of your own life in your own hands, and you can create and generate your own income, then you don't have to allow yourself to be driven like a slave where you can't stop and take a vacation.
And the other part is, what do you need to come in to feel comfortable with stopping to take a break for yourself? Like, we are so exhausted with these ideas, and that we have to perform even when we're not working at a certain level, that we don't know how to view ourselves as being correct in just taking a breath, knowing that we're doing what we're doing is okay, and that nobody gets to tell you how you feel when you wake up in the morning.
That's right.
We are still slaves to that mentality.
Right. And that's what has to change, because so when we do that, we get jealous. When we see other people vacationing and doing things with their families, and they have all this wealth and stuff, we think we got to grind harder, when the truth is we need to grind less. And plan more to not overwhelm ourselves. So what is naturally within us to do that course in life everybody seems to be seeking. Like, how do you know when you're on your course? Like, for me, it was like, oh, wait a minute, I just realized who I'm supposed to be and what I'm doing after working for 35, 40 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you're so tired, and then people say, I'm going on vacation. So a lot of people retire and start partying and stuff, and then they die. Well, that's the saddest thing that I have seen. I've seen people work 40 years in a job that they hated, and then they finally retire. But because of the stress of being in that job that they hated all those years, they start getting all these sicknesses, and then they die, like you say. So they never really enjoyed life. Life is to be enjoyed all the way through. You don't wait until you get 65 or 70 and then, okay, now I'm going to stop working this job I hate and going to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Now I'm going to stop and relax and enjoy life. Well, your life is gone. So this is what we have to teach our children, and we can create a balance. Think of what you love doing and master that so that that's what you can give to the world. However someone pays you for that service, whatever you're doing, you're going to love doing it, and you're going to love being around people that you do it with so that every day is a joy. And then when you get ready, you can take a break, and do not work in an environment where someone can threaten to take away your livelihood, because they don't care anything about you if they will do that. So if you are going to do something, and you can do a multiplicity of things, you don't just do one thing for 40 years. You can develop all kinds of skills. You can reinvent yourself, but have the freedom to do that, and have the skills of knowing how to do that so that you can live a balanced life. So then when it comes to having that life partner, that mate, that spouse, where you're going to plan how you're going to work together, so each of you can participate in the rearing of your children, and your children can see the partnership. They can see the balance in your life, where you're not always gone. You got to make the children stay at home alone because you got to work this 10 hours or they're going to fire you. All of that extreme stress-filled kind of behavior, that needs to end, because it's because of that kind of stress that we can't keep our relationship together. And when our relationships fall apart, our economics falls apart. So we end up replicating that same thing in the next generation.
Well, Sherry Van Smith is in the room with us, and she said, "Good morning to all coffee breakers. I worked hard to empower all my students to be aware of their present and to find choices they find drawn to at George Muneer Elementary School." So it every opportunity we can take to empower each other, and it can be for the most disparaged of us, but when we stop to say, you know what, I see you, I recognize you, which is what I had to do in an apology with my daughter yesterday. When I finished having my little moment, I'm like, wait a minute, this is my child. How do I cure what I didn't give her an opportunity to be at a moment? You know, to be heard, to be seen, to be valued, right? To be honored.
That's one thing before we go. And I think every parent, don't beat yourself up. We did the best we knew how with the knowledge we had. The same thing our parents did. Don't beat up your own parents. They did the best they could with the knowledge they had, the circumstances they were living under. Every generation does the best that they can with the knowledge that they have. So now that we know better, we can do better, as our wonderful Dr. Maya Angelou said. And so our children need to be able to do well, because they're grown. They're responsible for their lives. No matter what we did or didn't do, they are now responsible. So they have to take responsibility for where they are and do the best they can. Whether we provided an example of what you should do or what you shouldn't do, they should learn something and choose to move forward in life. Don't get stuck in the past, and don't get stuck at blaming someone. Choose the life you want to live and work toward it and make it happen.
Well, you know, we're getting ready to go down to the last minute or so of this. And I just want to say we got to come back.
Oh, always.
Because we really have so much more to unpack as it relates to families, bridging the gaps, history, all of those things. But I just want to thank you so much, Naimah, for one, the female solution, your earnest intention towards guiding us into a place that is going to be healing and helpful and good. And for being here with me today and raising my awareness and talking about your books and your family and the things. And I love Three Sisters, Three Black Sisters. I'm just all into that.
We got a book coming out called Growing Up Charles that I'm writing with my sisters. And that's going to really give us an insight on family life, growing up in the 60s and 70s in our household.
Yeah, so
it inspires.
Right. Well, it's 58:59. I'm going to take this last minute to say thank you, everyone that came into the room with us today. I'm Senabella. And of course, you know me. I am the coffee breaker at 7 a.m. on Fridays here on the Female Solution. And this wonderful sister, Naimah Latif, an executive producer, and the beautiful producer behind the scenes, Asada Kirkland. And we got to get her in the room because I want to talk about what she's created for so many people through her book fair. Yes. Have a great day. Everybody enjoy your life. This is a life we should live and be happy with. No matter what's happening, keep smiling. All right? Listen.
We've come to the end of our show today. If you missed any broadcasts, go to our website for the audio and video archives at www.thefemalesolution.com. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussions. And to our global family joining us from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, xie xie. India, dhanyavad. Japan, arigato. Korea, kamsamnida. Russia, spasiba. Germany, danke. Poland, dziękuję. France, merci. Spain, gracias. Italy, grazie. Egypt, shukran. Ghana, madasi. Nigeria, eshe. South Africa, Ngiyabonga. Senegal, Jaref. Kenya, Asante. Israel, Toda. Pakistan, Shukriya. Afghanistan, Tashakur. Saudi Arabia and Palestine, Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, and may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessings.